Look, the whole story in a nutshell goes like this. So Donald Trump has been a career criminal. Okay, the guy knew how to play media. He knew how to play investors. He knew how to launder money. He knew all of the ins and outs of real estate taught to him by his mentor, his father, the great KKK racist Fred Koch. Right? These guys were able to get all sorts of socialist, you know, incentives with deals that they made with the great state of New York or the city of Queens or the city of Manhattan to basically get incentives, tax write offs, this and that to put investments together to create projects that, in one form or another, would have been predatory in one realm or money laundering in another. Hey, you know what? Trump's not the only guy that did that. I'll assure you that. But he's definitely the guy that most of the United States knew in the 80s, all the way through his initiatives, investments in gambling in Jersey, where he probably perfected the whole junk bond routine and basically control fraud that undergirded his entire business, that led him to bankruptcy on several occasions, and then ultimately on the edge of bankruptcy after the great financial crisis. And that's a whole nother strata of what made him uniquely positioned to understand fake media. So here we are. There's this FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago to claw back top secret information that Trump may have been audacious enough to literally steal to potentially sell on the open market. I wouldn't put it past him. And not to mention that he thought he was untouchable. Remember, he said how many times that I could go down and shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nobody would stop me and I wouldn't lose any of my base? Well, he's been right so far. Okay. So here's the scenario, though, as it relates to fake media, right? So, like I mentioned to you before, a lot of fraternities have the underwritten and understated law to, under certain circumstances, where bad boys do bad things and they are about to get caught, the formula is lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate. And the crazy thing about that arena is complicity. And so, if everybody's on the same page and everybody gets their story straight, can somebody actually prove where the wrongdoing occurred? It's not that easy. That's where we start to get into this whole legal gymnastics symmetry of intent. So ultimately, we are in a situation where this insanely rotted, corrupt system in the United States birthed a guy like Donald Trump to become president of the United States to foment a white supremacist revolution coup d'etat based on an entirety of lies. Lies that he learned from what it is that I am revealing to you, that ironically, mainstream media completely covered up. The New York Times is completely in the epicenter of the financial universe. Is it possible that they did not know everything that I am telling you? Absolutely not. Now, in terms of actually understanding how and why they hid what it is that I continue to tell you, I can only speculate. I've heard it from on high from guys that are actually writers at the New York Times tell me that it's just basically a cultural thing. That the guys on Wall Street are people that they went to grade school with and their, private schools, and then of course their Ivy League institutions, and then ultimately writers and editorialists and members of the media, particularly if they work for an organization run by a billionaire, know where the mutual interests lie. So, are they going to blow up the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up in history if it actually might undermine their stability? Well, that's the ultimate question. And from where I'm sitting, I'd say it's obvious what they chose and why. And I can tell you that there was a book by the name of Aaron Ross Sorkin, who is I guess the lead editor at DealBook at the New York Times, that I've heard actually worked with Goldman Sachs, that's invested money in DealBook, that ultimately wrote a book called Too Big to Fail, which perceived the trifecta of John Paulson, Ben Bernanke, and Timothy Geithner as the heroes of the world because they saved the rich from going under like the rest of us in 2008 by using Federal Reserve Act 13.3 illegally behind closed doors to save themselves, which ultimately birthed the frustration of what became MAGA, because these are the same apparatuses that destroyed the golden goose going back decades. This destroyed our fundamental structure of industry, hard good manufacturing, steel, cars, every array of things that we consumed and the world consumed for a long time. And we offshored that and we outsourced that. And we became a nation of middlemen underskirted by financialization. And there's three major apparatuses of financialization that basically took over. The first is private equity. The second are hedge funds. And then the third are asset managers. The asset managers came about basically post 2008 as a result of Federal Reserve Act 13.3, of which placed the biggest of all asset managers, BlackRock, into pole position to be able to manage the rebuild using trillions of dollars of money digitized into existence by the Federal Reserve to backstop the criminal apparatus of Wall Street. So Trump is a mob boss, okay? But he's a mid-level player. Now, does he have big freaking friends in his orbit? Oh, yeah. Do you think that Putin's a real deal? Oh, yeah. But Putin and Russia compared to the United States, barely a blip on the radar, minus nuclear weapons, okay? I mean, oil and gas, that's another thing. But this trifecta between Trump and the Saudis and 9/11 and ultimately Russia and all things fossil fuel and real estate, I mean, come on. That's just the vortex and the vector of power. That's all there is to it. But still, Donald Trump, as his own entity, is a relatively small player in this giant apparatus that I'm explaining to you. So it's all about information. It's all about communication. It's all about who knows what, when, and how, who did what, and everything else that I continue to bring to you. And I'm the only one literally willing to stick his neck out to present to you the facts that we put in front of the con, or in the con, www.thecon.tv, and then ultimately in all of the other elements that we're doing. I don't know how I can express this to you any other way than to say that democracy was lost a long time ago. The integrity of law was lost a long time ago. We are a corporate fascist system undergirded by a criminal syndicate. That's not hyperbole. That's exactly what we are. And Trump is just a manifestation for that, from that. Listen, if you care about systemic racism in prisons, okay, that's part of this. If you care about healthcare, oh yeah, that's a big part of this. If you care about the military-industrial complex and 20 years of war, particularly in light of 9/11, and I was just reading an article that went back to 2015 based on 9/11 and what the Bush-Cheney administration knew, they were warned day in, day out, all day, every day, that 9/11 was coming. Did they know exactly where it was going to happen and when it was going to happen and how it was going to happen? So far, I haven't been able to ascertain that, but they all knew that Al-Qaeda was on the march and something was coming, and we also know that Cheney did not share information between the CIA and the FBI. I'm telling you that we are rotting from insane criminal corruption that has absolute control of our country. You, the people, are acting almost the same as the Bush-Cheney administration in light of Al-Qaeda, okay? So do you get to see the corollary here? More pain and suffering and disaster and everything else is coming. Why? Because you refuse to wrap your mind around it. Because it's too difficult, or it's too, not coming from the right place. Or there's an influencer that you haven't heard from that's told you that I'm the guy that you need to listen to, and every other sheeple sort of apparatus of this thing, of how this thing works. Meanwhile, there's millions of you out there who know that I'm telling the truth, but you're so beat down that you don't want to do anything about it, and you can't do anything about it. Listen, I'm going to take one last giant swing at this. This is the bottom of the ninth. There's full bases, and we can win this thing because we've got all the information. I just need millions of you to wrap your head around it so you can finally turn on the lights in your brain and go, holy shit, where has this guy been? I've been in front of your face the whole time. Listen, we are fighting a war of huge misinformation and disinformation. I cannot stand the fact that Alex Jones spent 4 hours a day spewing absolute bullshit without knowing anything, and the guy was raking in $50 to $70 million a year. I cannot believe that we had a president who's been a criminal his entire life rise to that level only to do what we're in the midst of now. And it's all because the adults in the room, the professionals that we depend on, everybody from the system that should be the ones who imbue the most ethics and integrity are, in the end of the day, the most complicit in a freaking circus of criminality. We've got to purge the system. Now, there's only one way to do that I can see peacefully, and that's for millions of us to show up equipped with the information to once again, like I said yesterday, yell to the world that this was the day that we fully understood what took place to make this society the way it is. There's two mega questions that we have to resolve. We have to resolve what Saudi Arabia was involved with as it relates to 9/11 and why it matters and why they did what they did. You answer all those questions, we're going to reveal a lot. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is just simply to understand everything that I've unpacked on you regarding the 2008 Great Financial Crisis and how it led to Federal Reserve Act 13.3 being used illegally to guarantee, with the full faith and credit of the United States, a crime syndicate. Yeah, it appeased, or it pacified the top 10%. If you're a doctor, a physicist, a tech guy, any number of professions that require incredible brain capacity, most of your life is imbued in what it is that your profession is. But you do want and justifiably so, your money to work for you. So all you're looking at is the bottom line. So over the course of the last 13 years, have you experienced a bull market? Yeah. Have you bothered asking questions as to why and how that bull market functions? 99% of you don't, because you don't care. You're going to the country club with your kid driving your Tesla and you're living life, a grand life. But you're going to care twofold when A, you can't breathe the air anymore because it's become so toxic and global warming has gotten to a point where you can't raise your family on this life in the nice, sort of way you've been accustomed to. But why on earth would you turn your back to the criminal rot that has destroyed everything because you know it's going to get you eventually? I don't know. Everybody's under the same thumb of this absolute corrupt racket, and I'm trying to wake you up. Please join me. Onwards and upwards.